Hey, my name is Jordan, or Jorp, I'm going with. And the short answer to the title of the video is obviously yes, a lowly artist type like me can in fact create a game. That's my game right there. Hostile. It's a 3D platformer with a speedrunning focus, and it takes a lot of inspiration from the Dreamcast and PS2, 6th gen era of games, and just 2000s aesthetics in general. But you can play it right now on Steam, and that'd be amazing if you did. Hostile is still very early on in development, and it's my first game, so no game jams or anything before this point, so expect it to be a little rough around the edges, but I think it's pretty fun.
If you try it and you end up liking it, maybe you could drop a little wish list my way. I don't know. I don't actually want to talk about the game Hostile too much in this devlog. I wanted to talk more about the fact that I am obviously an artist by trade. My specialty is definitely in animation, and it's a helpful skill for making games, but how did I even go about getting to this point? An artist with no coding experience trying to make a game effectively by themselves. Well, let me tell you.
So instead of starting from zero and learning coding in Python or C++ or Rust, I instead started with something a lot more approachable. So I took a college class focused on Unreal Engine. Unreal Engine is this very tiny little game engine that's totally free to use, and it uses a system called Blueprint. Blueprint is a form of visual scripting, which essentially means it's like a baby picture book version of coding for feeble-minded individuals like myself. Blueprint quickly turned out to be this really fun system that totally demystified the idea of coding for me. Because to be honest, if I even accidentally open up Visual Studio when I'm in Unreal, a year is actually taken off of my life in return. But overall, Unreal Engine itself turns out to be a really fun, powerful tool. And as long as your computer can run it and you have like 10 different external drives worth of space, you actually do get access to a really good library of stuff like tutorials, assets, and tools at your disposal. Alongside other powerful free software like Blender, you can actually end up making a lot of cool stuff by yourself in very little time for free. And even though that class was pretty brief, it gave me the foundation I needed to start working on a fully fledged game afterwards. So I end up modeling this really cool assassin character. He has this badass plasma sword. I end up making a few simple movement abilities, and I could make this guy explode. So at this point, I truly believed I could go forward and I could make a Devil May Cry style action game. So how did that turn out? Yeah, I very quickly learned how absurd that was of a goal. It was just a little too ambitious. I ran into a lot of brick walls straight away. So I just ended up stepping away from the engine for a while. That was until I went through another form of character development and I started playing a lot more single player games. I actually took a break from playing games for a few years because at the time, the only game I would play was... But I had a really renewed interest in games when I started to learn more about how they work under the hood. When you have that perspective of understanding how games work, they become just exponentially more fun because you really start to appreciate just the great design and super creative ideas in these games when you see them. With this fresh new perspective, I'm having a ton of fun just going and replaying old games at this point, and even trying some indie games that my friends recommend me, like this one, Pseudo Regalia. So Pseudo Regalia is this really charming, super snappy 3D platform. It's just a ton of fun to move around and jump from place to place. It has this cool aesthetic. It's a great time. But at some point as I'm playing through it, I see this oddly familiar little dude down there. And I'm like, wait a second. I know that little dude. I do a little digging. I find this cool interview and it says that this super fun game was actually made in Unreal Engine with Blueprint in 5 months. This super fun game is made using the same tools that I know how to use. This is like a revelation for me. Like, wait, I can actually make stuff like this in Unreal Engine. I know how to make that. I could do that. Like, I put the pieces together and I'm like, wait, I could actually make a game myself. It won't be a crazy 20-hour-long action game, but a 3D platformer, that's something I could actually do. So all of a sudden, I do have this huge surge of motivation. I open up Unreal Engine and I start playing around, making some moving mechanics, and then nothing for about 4 months because I just got super busy, honestly. But eventually, I did get the free time to start working on this game as a final project for another class. So I finally have the time. I already have the foundational skills. And I go ahead and I make a prototype in just a couple of weeks, and I get an A for that project, but that's not enough. I feel like I have so much momentum at this point. I'm like quickly developing the skills, and I feel like I can just roll with this and make something really cool. So I did that for basically all summer for 4 months. But during this period, I'd really have to thank the people who supported me along the way, namely my hot girlfriend, for being incredibly supportive as I just sat in my computer chair for hours on end and slowly transforming into a shrimp. And another shout out to some of my close friends who helped test the game and provide ideas and feedback along the way. You guys know who you are. Another big shout out to this cool musician I met named Joy, or Dion IV, who made all the music you've been hearing throughout this video. She just saw that I was making this like cool game and decided to take a chance and make a few tracks for the game. So go check her stuff out. The end of summer rolls around and I'm feeling pretty antsy because I told a lot of people during this time frame that I'm going to show off this game in August, regardless of where it is. And now I actually had to live up to that. And I know a lot of us want things that we create to be absolutely perfect before we show them off, but I just said, screw that. I'm just going to do it anyways. So I went out and I demoed my game at a local indie dev meetup. And the responses I got were honestly really good. I just went out and I said, hey, here's my thing. For the most part, the responses were actually really positive. Despite the bugs and missing textures, people said the core gameplay was actually pretty fun, which was basically all the confirmation I needed to know that I actually had something here. I could have worked endlessly on this game before I shared it, but there's only so much you can learn about a game from just yourself playing it. You really need to show it off to people to know what needs to change to make it actually fun. People did say it was fun, so I figured it was time to take the next step. Here it is. Hostyle's in a super early state, but I've been chipping away at it, and I think it's time to start showing it off more. So tell me what you think. But to get back to the title of the video, an artist can definitely make a game these days. And even though it's difficult to make a game with no coding experience, it's probably easier than you would think, especially with how crazy powerful free tools like Unreal, Godot, and Blender are. So if you're like me and you want to get into this stuff, I think the main takeaway is just to set realistic goals for yourself and actually hold yourself accountable to them. It's okay to get help from either people or tools and things that you don't really excel in, but just be sure to not keep this stuff all to yourself. You got to show these things off and get feedback because it makes progress a lot smoother and it just drives you less insane. So if you guys have gotten to this point in the video, I just want to say thank you. I'm new to video editing as well, and I hope that you'll continue to stick with me and see how Hostyle turns out. But I realized I didn't actually talk about the game that much this video, but that's why it's like Devlog 0, right? I wanted to talk more about that effect that it feels like when you start making a game and then you start playing games after that. It just makes games so much more fun. I might do a whole video on that. I started replaying Majora's Mask recently, and that game is just insanely good. Just looking back on it.